Ladies and gentlemen, Labrid. I want to thank the committee to invite me from Israel to expose you a very interesting character in Latvia, Jewry. Jewish historiography typically views the emancipatory process as a slowly, gradual, and continuous transition from communal life in a traditional Jewish society to a new life in a modern, non-Jewish one. Throughout the 19th century, Eastern European Jewry found itself in a complex reality in which a spirit of modernity entered Jewish communities that still adhered to the values of past tradition, especially in the field of education. The life and activity of Reubens Josefs Vunderbars, one of the pioneers of modern Jewish education in all of Russia, are exceptional in this context. After having been exposed to the Haskalah, Jewish Enlightenment movement, throughout Germany, Wunderbar chose to act in the educational field to bring its principles to the Riga Jewish community. In this presentation, I'm very honored and excited to take out from history's forgetfulness this character so special and so important for Latvian Jewish history. Reubens Josefs Vunderbars was born in 1812 in Mitau, Jelgava, and received a traditional Jewish education focused on Jewish studies at the Cheder religious elementary school, especially on Talmudical instruction, speaking only Yiddish, and with minimal encounter with non-Jewish people. At 8 years old, he joined his father's business and married a few years later. After financial failure, the only choice he had was to work as a melamed, traditional Jewish teacher. But at this time, being a melamed was not a good job for a Jew. Contrary to the position of the rabbi, which was very respectable because of his high level of Torah learning, the social condition of the melamed was at the bottom of the economic scale, in part because of the large competition. Everyone can work as melamed. If you know how to read, you can teach reading without professional training, without particular tools, or even without special building. The melamed taught at his home or at the synagogue, and the Siddur, the daily prayer book, was the only textbook. However, Wonderful was not satisfied with this traditional way of life. And in contrast with most of his contemporaries, he chose to acquire a secular education by himself. In 1835, he passed his teaching examination and received a teacher's certificate from the General Governor of Livonia, Estonia, and Courland Chancellery. This characteristic, a social traditional Jewish learning culture with an autodidactic secular education, is one of the defining features of the Maskilim, Jewish Enlightenment movement leaders portrayed in Germany at the end of the 18th century and during the first half of 19th century in Galicia and Russia. This characteristic also reflects the ideal of the early Skolas as a cultural movement which aspired to develop a scientific approach to Judaism. Wunderbar published in German a large number of articles on Jewish topics and current issues, as well as 2 scholarly books. One on medicine in the time of the Talmud, Biblische Talmudische Medizin, Riga und Leipzig, and the other on the Jews of Courland, which earned him the title of the first historian of Latvian Jewry, Geschichte der Juden in der Provinzenliv und Courland, Mitau. Wunderbar worked as the official translator on behalf of the government and served for some time as the crown rabbi of Mitau, which was an administrative function, registration of births and deaths specifically. His list of publication reveals very different interests. like general literature and linguistics, history, Jewish customs, philosophy, such as problems of Buddhism, and other Jewish issues. Eclectic culture without research specialization is also one of the characteristics of the first leaders of the Haskalah movement, of which Wunderbar is an outstanding example. As other Maskilim, Wunderbar was also occupied with improving the Jew status by accelerating the Jew emancipation. He hoped to see the breaking of barriers between the Jews and their neighbors, primarily through broadening the use of the German language, and secondly, by encouraging Budovicization and the adoption of new profession. In 1840, he published a short essay about a Russian experiment to create an agricultural settlement in Kherson, populated by Jewish families from Courtland. 15 years later, he wrote an historical book, The Right of the Jew to Live in a State is Measured by the Degree of Benefit that the Jew brings to the state. The Jews of the region have clearly demonstrated that they are fully aware of their task to benefit society. But above all, it seems to me that the most significant enterprise of Wunderbar was in the field of education. Wunderbar used his experience as a Melamed and his formal teacher's training to renew the face of Jewish education in Latvia. He participated in the establishment of the first modern Jewish school in Riga in 1840, the Israelitischen Gemeindeschule, and served as the assistant of Max Lilienthal, who him succeeded as the school's director for 2 years. In this school, secular as well religious subjects were taught: geography and history, arithmetic, German grammar, and Russian language. It was one of the 4 modern Jewish schools in all of Russia. The others were found at Odessa, Kishinev, and Uman. Already in 1841, the Russification politician viewed it as the main model for all Jewish communities. The school grew rapidly after its founding and became the community's pride and joy, which it showed to every visiting dignitary. After a few years, Wunderbar left Riga and came back to Mitau, where he was asked to teach religion studies at a private Jewish girls' school. His educational activity also included writing a number of textbooks. Textbooks are a very important source for understanding the history of education. As Bracha Alpert, one of the most important Israeli education researchers, said, curriculum text explicitly present intention, goals, and ambition of their planners. The ideologies and philosophies that guide them are located in different parts of the text, sometimes clearly and sometimes enclaved in it. This methodological premise is very pertinent to the case of Wunderbar's textbook. All of them reflect the educative ideal of the Haskalah, integration between general culture and Jewish culture. This book, for example, Deutsches Elementarleserbuch für die Israelitische Jugend, Mitau. This is a textbook for Jewish pupils, not only to teach them the German language, but also to form their cultural worldview, imitatio mundi. After a few reading exercises, this book contains short educative texts from German writers such as Grimm, Campe, Goethe, and Schiller, and from rabbinical literature. The history section contains a biography of Moses Mendelssohn. The geography section is composed of 3 chapters. The first one exposes general geographic notions. The second one is dedicated to the Courland area. And the third presents the land of Israel to the young pupils. This textbook is also interesting. Yesod Emunat Israel. I quote, the essence of the religious and moral doctrine of the Israelites contains the doctrine of faith and duties toward God, us, and our neighbors, as well as towards the government. This short book claims that Judaism is not a religion of facts, as the church father said, rather a practice ethic in the spirit of Kantian philosophy, which aspired to connect logos, ethos, and nomos, the reason, the ethic, and the rule. Wunderbar gives the same importance to the duty towards God, social moral behavior, and compliance with the laws of the state. For him, and also for most Jewish educators and rabbis in Germany during the 19th century, a good Jew has to be a good citizen and a good person. This does not mean that Wunderbar undervalued the importance of the halacha, the Jewish law. The opposite is true. In this textbook, as in Abridged Shulchan Aruch, Code of Jewish Law for Children, that it composed in 1852, he wrote about all the mitzvot, good deeds, as an Orthodox Jew, and did not propose reforms or change to the religious service. In Wunderbar's vision, his mission is to emphasize the moral dimension of Judaism. This dimension was generally unknown to Jew and non-Jew. For him, his mission is not to repeat known things, such as the importance of halacha in Jewish life. In conclusion, Wunderbar died in Mitau in 1868, at only 56. He lived a short but meaningful life. A memorial plaque was erected in his memory in the great synagogue in Mitau. The synagogue was burned in 1942, but his spirit stayed lit among us. After all, Wunderbar in German means wonderful in English. Paldies.
Thank you really so much. Please, questions? And questions may be put in any language using the mic, which will be provided to.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I have a question about the legacy of Reubens Wunderbar. Can you see that the impact was such that there were some Jewish educators who sort of continued his work in Mitau, in general in Latvia? Was he a founder of a movement of Haskalah? So in a broader context, do you see him only as an individual person, or as a founder of some stream, of some more important sort of movement?
As I want to say, it's an autodidact person. In general, in the Haskalah historiography, Wunderbar is unknown. People don't know him, but in fact, it was an important person in Courland. And I think that the importance of him is to begin the modern education in Courland. And after his period, all the current educators were in this way.
Thank you. And if I may put another question, do you know something about his family, about his descendants, children, and some continuation in a physical?
It's also the question of my wife. Yesterday we went there with Ilya, and we asked also the question. We don't know nothing about his family. As I said, he was married, but we don't know nothing after that. In the necrologic text in German published by one of his, his a friend, There is nothing also about his family, so we don't know.
Any more questions? Questions, comments? Jā, lūdzu. Vai kāds grib uzdot, domājot par jautājumiem, lūdzu? Jā.
In English, please.
No, but will be translated. Okay, in English, no problem. Thank you for a very interesting presentation. My question is, did he ever visit Palestine or Jerusalem by himself? Or maybe he was in connection with some, let's say, Western Jews with Spanish descent, or I don't know.
Okay, Mito was an important place of the Haskalah. Mito and from German influence. So, but also it was an Orthodox community. As some maskil were there also, and a little reform, but in general it was an Orthodox.
Jā, paldies. Vēl jautājumi? Neredzu. So let us thank the speaker once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.